Hello everybody and welcome to this playthrough for Rookie Division with various wins. Before we have a closer look at all the content, make sure that you do hit the thumbs up button, also subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. For those of you that do want to take the next step in your game and improve it even more, scan the QR code that is here on the screen or use the link patreon.com/golfclashtom you can find in the description down below. That will take you to our platform where you can find all our premium guides, checkpoint challenge, tour play, and tournament play. Last but not least, the info box on the right hand side gives you the club distance adjustment, elevation adjustment, also a ball and club type I suggest you to play with. Have in mind that those are all suggestions and you don't have to follow it if you don't want to, but there is always a plan behind it. So let's go to hole number 1. For hole number 1, playing on the left hand side is a little bit more aggressive in terms of the drive, because we do have to bounce over the rough and the sand. But if you're playing on the left side, you give yourself a better chance for a drop, especially if you are contemplating to go on the right hand side on that fairway. That's going to leave you have to bounce over the rough and the sand by the green instead of doing that on the drive. Here, adjusting with 20% elevation using all the topspin I have with my extra mile and 1 bar of right spin. The more topspin you have, the easier it will be to bounce over the rough and the sand. As you can see, with only 4.5 bar topspin, we landed very close with our first bounce by that rough. Second shot, we are playing, in this case, with our Saturn. Here it all comes down to playing with the long iron that gives you the best possible ball guideline. Because the better ball guideline you have, the more accurate you can be in terms of attacking the pin for an eagle. I'm playing with the Saturn using backspin and also a little bit of left spin to take myself away from that glitchy spot. So once I've done that, leaving the ball guideline short of the hole because we need to compensate for the rollout. And as again, if you do have a club that do not have a fully developed ball guideline, then you will have to estimate the rollout. And that can be so much harder than if you're playing with a better club. And that's why I always say, like here, especially when playing from front tee with intermediate clubs or lower level clubs, that you definitely have to be good on estimating that rollout. Otherwise, you will see yourself miss more than you will drop. For hole number 7, which is hole number 2 of the Cajon Resorts, we are gonna play from minimum distance. Here it would be recommended to have a club that do not have that much power, which means that we can then find a min line much easier. Now I don't really have a bag like that and I have to just be just after when it clicks over from the Goliath to Sniper. Now you can see I'm using 4 and a click backspin, which is max backspin on Sniper level 7. If you don't have that amount of backspin on your Sniper, then you can play with the Guardian instead, which obviously has a lot of backspin, and then to just make sure not to overdo the backspin instead. But I believe that this is the best way to attack this pin in both the way of getting a hole-in-one, but also in the fact of trying to lock in a safe birdie, because trying to bounce higher up, then we put the bunker and the rough in play in a much bigger extent. Medium distance plus 25 is what I would play. Now, that's not what I play in the video, because that is slightly under adjusted, but 25% elevation, mid club, and then you don't have to play with a Kingmaker. But when we play such an elevated hole, using a ball with a lot of wind resistance would really help. On hole number 3, I do recommend to play with the ball that has the most power for you. In this case, I'm going with a Titan ball, but if having a power 8 or a power 10 ball, you could most definitely go with that instead. 4.5 bar topspin and 2 right spin. I'm stretching out to absolute max to estimate the ball guidelines direction. Obviously, I want to have the ball guideline to go center down the fairway if possible. But again, stretching out will allow myself to have a better visual of where I'm actually aiming. Max plus 10 for the adjustment. And here we do get down center down the fairway. If you do have a headwind or you have a crosswind, you may need to either back up and use more topspin if you have that available, obviously. but to bounce over the rough and the sand in the beginning, or you're going to have to use some overpower to get yourself to land at the spot that I'm doing here in Tailwind. On the second shot, I like to play into the rough, like a rough bump like this. And the reason for that is, like, even if you would be hitting great on the right hand side or a perfect, you will still get yourself a chance to get the ball to drop. It's all about the speed, as we're playing into a nice funnel spot. If you do not fancy to go for a rough bump like this, you can back up and use backspin and land on the fairway before the rough and the sand and bounce all the way over. But the best possible chance for an albatross here, in my opinion, is to go for the rough bump. There is, in my opinion, two ways of playing this hole. One is to use a club with a lot of backspin and to aim just before the green starts and attack the pin that way. That's the more normal way. However, though, we do not really have that high level clubs, or especially not on this account. I don't have that. So I'm trying to find an alternative way where a rough bump like this is super safe, but also a nice way of actually using a long iron such as the Goliath that do have a lot of topspin, and we are actually spoiled having the ball guideline to show all the way through the hole. Medium distance plus 5 is what I would like to do as an adjustment, which is a slight tweak based on the result here in this video. And you can see here that the ball comes down the green with a good speed, and we're missing just right because I'm using too little in adjustment. Navigator is a perfect ball, reduce the wind slightly, but it's not one of the most expensive balls out there. So alternative way here for the Koh Hong Resorts, hole number 4, to attack the pin for an hole-in-one. Take your game to the next level with our ultimate tournament text guide for the Aquatic Retreat 9-Hole Cup Master Division. If you do want to be competitive without having to spend hours in the practice mode, then our guides are the best ones to get. Scan the QR code here on the screen, or you go to patreon.com/golfclashtommy via the link that is in the description down below. If you are a player that just not looking for the tournament guides, but you may also look for tour guides and checkpoint challenge, we have something for you as well. So make sure to select the package that suits you the best. And if you do have any questions before sign up, you can always email our beautiful support at golfclashtommy.com. For hole number 1, which is hole number 5 of the Koh Hong Resorts, this is a par 4 that is difficult. And the reason I do believe this is difficult is because it requires a lot of elevation on the approach if we're going straight forward. You can go over the water on the right and then you will have much less elevation on the approach, but it's also going to be a much longer shot towards the pin. Aiming just straight down the fairway, making sure that we are not too close to the left or too close to the right in relation to the trees, because the trees could then, in that case, cover the view that we have, and then that's going to be a really tough one to save. Max plus 20 is the adjustment, and if you have the possibility to play with an accurate driver such as the rock or the quarterback, that's definitely recommended. Now for the approach, we are going to play with our sniper, and the sniper here is beautiful in terms of getting a good ball guideline. However, though, you can play this one very conservative and you can play this one aggressive. You can either go for a rough bump, which is an aggressive line, or you bounce on the fairway that is before the rough and the sand, over the rough and the sand towards the pin. That's going to be more conservative and it's going to be much harder to drop. However, though, it's important that you play with the 40% elevation that we do list on the website and also here, and not doing what I'm doing in the video, which becomes slightly under adjusted, because then that's no point in going an aggressive line if you're gonna miss by as much as I'm doing here in the video. However, though, this is not an easy one to drop at all. This is definitely a bonus drop in my opinion, but by playing down towards a flat fairway with a nice rough patch before, that's definitely not a bad opportunity, at least, even though the drop is going to be hard to achieve. For hole number 3 from the front tee, which is also hole number 6 of the Koh Hong Resorts, I want us to play with the big topper here. It doesn't matter what club level you have on the big topper. It's just that the big topper has such a good topspin amount, which means that we can then always reach into a position where, in a worst case scenario, we will just rescue ourselves for an eagle, or in the best case scenario, we're always shooting for an albatross. Max plus 10 is the adjustment, and you can see that I'm using all the topspin that I can together with some left spin. Center the ball, hit perfect, and we're looking to get as far down the fairway possible. What we do need to have in mind though is that a great ball with a big topper is a bit dangerous. And what I mean with that is that the accuracy on the big topper is so bad that a great ball will affect the outcome. And in this case, hitting a great right would most definitely be in the rough. However, though, from there's no problem to rescue it at all. Now, depending on what type of level you have on your sniper, it's either to be the rough bump or you are bouncing on the fairway. Now, with the sniper level 6, I do not have enough topspin to reach towards the pin. Therefore, I in the end have to settle for doing a bounce up play instead. Not my favorite, because you can see that the ball guideline, even with a sniper 6, is pretty terrible, and we're gonna have to guess a lot. So the rough bump is definitely my first option, with the bounce up as a distant second, in my opinion. Only if you can't play the rough bump is when you should be playing the bounce up. And also, if you want to play the bounce up, it should be with the way of thinking like, okay, I'm only looking for an eagle here, and therefore don't want to take any sort of risk. On hole number 7, if you do not possess a driver with a lot of curl and topspin, then the right side is the play for you. We are playing with a quarterback and a navigator ball. The reason for the quarterback is to allow ourselves to have a good accuracy that will, if you do hit great on either side, make sure that you're still staying on the fairway, or at least making the grades being less affected. If you do play with an extra mile that do have a pretty poor accuracy, then the ball will fly to the left or to the right, depending on what grade you're hitting, quite a bit. Max plus 20 on the adjustment. We do want to have the ball roll down the fairway without obviously rolling into the rough. On the second shot, you can here decide to go for either a grizzly bounce over, or you go for a rough bump with your sniper. If you do play with the grizzly here, you're going to have to take into account that the ball guideline will have a pretty significant rollout. So the backspin that I'm using here in the video is way too little, and you can also see that on the outcome. But if you're playing a rough bump with your sniper, sure, it is on the more aggressive side, but you will then have a much better ball guideline to follow. So if I would have to choose in a tournament scenario where I'm going for the best chance for a drop, then the rough bump is the best chance for a drop, even though it is, once again, on the more aggressive side. Hole number 8, this is by far the toughest par 3 of the three par 3s we have of the Kong Resort. The reason for that is that we're playing a massively downhill shot, and we're playing that on a bumpy fairway. What I like to do here is to play with our sniper, and mainly as we do want to have a good ball guideline. I'm aiming slightly left of the pin, just because there will be a very strong push. Even though the wind strength isn't that high, we will have a very strong push once it hits the ground with our first bounce. I'm adjusting with 30% elevation. I'm using a couple of clicks of underpower, just because we are pulling up that hill. Because it is important that if you're pulling up, or like pulling from a lower point to a higher point, you're going to gain more distance. That's how it works here in Golf Clash, and therefore I added a couple of clicks of underpower to compensate for the extra length that we're getting on that tee shot. Hole number 5, which is hole number 9 of the Kong Resorts, we are going to play on the right hand side. Do never play on the left hand side, because that will just be cause to confusion, as you will have loads of tree in your face on the approach. So we're playing on the right hand side, bouncing with our extra mile over. You can play with other drivers as well, but the important part is that you do have power, because if you don't have power, you might pull yourself into max club, and that's going to then require overpower, and that overpower could be tricky, and then you put the bunker and the rough in play. We're gonna play this drive, something else than max plus 25. We're gonna play max plus 10. Standard adjustment here with a 10% elevation, and then we do have the sniper towards the pin. The reason I want the sniper is due to its good ball guideline, because otherwise it's going to be such a massive guess, and it's going to be very difficult for you to have a chance to drop this shot. Now in headwind, playing with a sniper 7 is maybe not super, as we are not really having the distance that we want. I like to leave the ball guideline slightly short, as my experience with this hole that even if the ball guideline is short, we still come in with decent amount of speed. No elevation and true club distance. It's going to be somewhere between medium and maximum distance of our club. Unfortunately, we don't have enough speed to get towards the pin, but we're getting very close. A power 3 ball here is definitely something I would recommend if you want to play with sniper. Otherwise, if you want to play with a big dog or any other club that has more power, a P2 ball is just enough. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching this playthrough for Rookie Division with various wins. If you do want to improve your game even more, scan the QR code here on the screen or go directly to patreon.com/golfclashtommy via the link in the description down below. Last but not least, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications. Those 3 things will help the channel immensely. Thank you once again for watching. I wish you the best of luck in your Golf Clash game.